Okay, I think we'll get started. I'm going to try to let people in from the waiting room as they come in. But thanks for everyone for being here. Welcome everyone to the September meeting of the Philadelphia Dynamo User Group. We are proud to have Ehsan Iran-Nejad, the creator of the pyRevit tool, with us tonight. He's going to be presenting some of the built-in tools for pyRevit, as well as how to develop some of your own tools and distribute them to your teams and really make great use of the power of Python within the Revit development environment. So I have a few bits of business to go through before we get started here. So first, just a little bit about PDUG. So the Philadelphia Dynamo User Group is a community of computational designers, and we try to focus on the Philadelphia area, but really, you know, especially with everything being virtual right now, we are happy to have everyone from around the country and around the world joining us tonight. We try to mainly focus on Dynamo, but we also really like to explore other related technologies, which is why we have pyRevit being presented tonight. An announcement for PDUG: we need volunteers. If you'd like to help us out with programming our events, doing some marketing our graphics, researching things for us, or presenting some of your work at an upcoming meeting, we'd be happy to have you help us out. If you're interested, just drop us a line at our email address, phillydynamo@gmail.com. Our next PDUG event is going to be Tuesday, October 20th. We're going to have Microsoft Resources present Rhino inside Revit. They're going to be presenting how to use the tool, how to bring some of your Rhino models into Revit, as well as use the power of that tool to use your Grasshopper scripts to manipulate data and, you know, automate things and really drive some geometry inside of the Revit environment. So it should be a really great talk. That's next event, October 20th, should be 6 p.m. Eastern. Speaking of Microsoft, we're very happy to have them sponsor our AIA credits for this month. So just a little bit of boilerplate we got to go through for this. So this is worth 1 AIA CEU. Our objectives for this meeting are to understand the basics of using the Python programming language to interact with and manipulate Revit model data, to use the pyRevit preloaded tools to complete common project analysis and development tasks which are not possible in the standard Revit interface, to prototype your own automation tools for completing complex BIM tasks using Python, and to distribute your own custom developed tools to your teams using the unified pyRevit interface. If you have not already provided your AIA number in your Eventbrite registration, please email that to us. Also, if you need to have a certificate for manually reporting your credit, or excuse me, to self-report your credit, or for any other purpose that you would need these credits for, just email us within 10 days and we'll try to get that certificate out to you. So finally, welcome to Ehsan Iran-Nejad, creator of pyRevit. He's going to be walking us through the pyRevit tool, and thanks for being here.
Hey guys. Thank you. So let me actually start sharing my screen. Okay, you guys want to see my screen? Let me pause this. Okay. First of all, thanks for inviting me to your event and letting me talk about pyRevit. The pyRevit project is an open source project that I started about 6 years ago when I started getting sort of like more deeper into working with Revit on larger scale projects and whatnot, and I started figuring out that, hey, this Revit is not as fast as I want it to be, and it doesn't have the feature set that I sort of like expected to have as a user that's working on large scale projects. So I started developing my own Python scripts and figured out a way to get them into to run into Revit environment to be able to basically automate a series of tasks that I wanted to perform. And later on, it sort of like I started developing a series of APIs and tools that would help me create more advanced and better tools to be able to basically take care of much more complex tasks. Sometime about like 5 years ago, about like 6 months after I actually started the project, I decided to share the project online as a open source project so everybody can also benefit from it. And the rest has been history, basically, just project growing and adopting more users, and I got a lot of really good feedback from everybody, and that's basically has been the life of the project. If you go open your whatever search website they use and search for pyRevit, generally you get a series of like links that are related to the articles that everybody else published about pyRevit. But one of the first hits that you get is to the GitHub pyRevit repository. And this link will take you to this repository, which is basically where all the source code for pyRevit is stored. And it's the main website that you can actually download the installers and whatnot for pyRevit and get it installed on your machine. One of the pyRevit resources that doesn't normally show up in the search is the pyRevit wiki that I talk about. I'll talk about it in a few minutes. So when you go to the pyRevit repo, if you look at the right side of the screen, and the GitHub sort of like layout has changed throughout the year. So this is the newer version that everything is sort of like the project information is on the right side. You'll see the description about the project, a link to the wiki. I'm going to open this and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And a series of releases. These are pretty much the only things that you really care about if you want to download and use pyRevit. If you go on the releases, you see that the latest sort of like full release is listed here. But when I click on the releases tab, it will take me to the list of all the published releases. And you see that the pyRevit 4.8 beta 3 marked as a pre-release is also published online. The homepage only shows you the latest full release, but there are always a couple of like beta releases available that has the most fixes and whatnot, and the new features that are being developed and stuff like that. Part of the reason they're basically fully functional, but part of the reason that I mark them as beta or pre-release is because sort of like help out the BIM managers in larger companies not to deploy that version as something that's used across their company, and kind of wait for all the tests and errors and bugs and stuff like that to be removed. So if you want to use pyRevit, I would highly suggest playing either with 4.76 or 4.8, which has a lot of really good features. This is the third beta, so it's fairly stable. You can click on this and generally go through the assets and find the .exe installer, and you can download that and install it on your machine. And I'll show you how that works basically. I'm going to actually download this one right here. Let's go to that. Beta 3, I'm going to download this one. And the other resource that I wanted to talk about is the wiki for pyRevit. If you click on this link, it'll take you to the sort of like a Notion workspace that is designed to be really a website. But it's a really, really good resource in terms of if you have a Notion account, you can actually make comments and communicate with me on this wiki as well. So if you see errors and whatnot, discrepancies in the documentation, you can actually comment that right there and let me know, and I can fix it on the fly very quickly. The wiki has been sort of like grouped into, all the contents has been grouped into a couple of different sections. One is called the Getting Started. And then if you scroll down, you see staying updated, dealing with the issues, getting involved with the project, and sort of like all the base pages are linked at the bottom as well. To get started with pyRevit and learn what pyRevit is and sort of like start using it and stuff like that, all you need is really this Getting Started page. And this Getting Started page also has two different sections in it: getting started using pyRevit and developing for pyRevit. pyRevit, as you can see, has sort of like two different aspects to it. At its core, it's a rapid application prototyping environment for Autodesk Revit. It lets you create scripts and tools very quickly within the Revit runtime, test them out, make sure they work, deploy them very easily to your team members and stuff like that, and get them to enjoy the benefits of those tools as well. But it also, for the sort of like standard Revit users, it also comes with a really good set of basic tools that I ended up developing over the past 6 years as I was using Revit. And it also has a lot of tools involved with it that has been included in it that's been contributed by the community. So other PyRevit users and whatnot, they have created tools added to the base tool sets, or they have created their own extensions for PyRevit that sort of like have a series of tools that are specific for a certain task, and they have contributed the extensions as well. So that's sort of like the overall structure of the wiki. The getting started with PyRevit section, this section is fairly easy. It'll take you through the installation of PyRevit. I'm not going to take you through this whole thing. Everything is basically described here with screenshots and stuff like that. Fairly easy to install PyRevit on your machine. You can see a couple of guides to the most important tools in PyRevit, but going through them will show you how generally these PyRevit tools work. And you can basically figure out the rest of them because they're super, super simple. As part of this presentation, I'm going to show a whole series of these more interesting tools, and we'll talk about how to develop for PyRevit as well very quickly. One of the bigger resources inside this wiki is the developer docs. That if you are a developer for PyRevit, that you want to create your own Python and C# and other tools within the PyRevit environment, there's a really good resource in here that gets you started with developing every different types of command. There's a series of YouTube videos that'll take you to the PyRevit YouTube channel to get started programming with Python for Revit, and a whole bunch of other references on different aspects of PyRevit and the utilities that are available to you and how to set up extensions and all that kind of stuff. They're all described here. Throughout this conversation, I might take you to a couple of these pages to sort of like show you how they're set up and how you can find the information. But this is going to be our home for everything related to PyRevit. If there's anything missing, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to add it there, because I really want this to be the sort of like the ultimate source of truth for PyRevit as far as the PyRevit usage goes. And this is obviously the main source code repository for the whole PyRevit project. So with this, I'm gonna start showing you what PyRevit really is and how the tools work. I'm actually going to copy this downloaded this into the other download directory. Okay, so when you have the Revit installed on your machine, you can come to Downloads and double click on the installer, and it'll take you, actually download the PyRevit CLI. Anyway, so the PyRevit installer works very similar to every other installer that you have used on Windows. Fairly simple. It'll give you a sort of like a home page, like a start initialization page, and it'll take you through a couple of steps. You can specify the destination. There's a default destination that PyRevit gets installed there. Fairly easy. Installs on your machine. You launch your Revit next time, just like any other add-in that you install for Revit. It's going to ask you that, hey, do you want to load this information? All this name and publishing information are actually provided. PyRevit installer is signed, so you can say always load without no issues. And what you see is this sort of like the PyRevit output window in general, I call it. And it sort of like gives you a log of what is happening on the load process. So in this example, I've launched my Revit 2020 and I've opened a document. And while I was launching the Revit 2020, PyRevit output this information for me that, hey, you're using this version of PyRevit, and a couple of other things like the Revit version that you're using is this, and a couple of like all the extensions that's loading and whatnot from here. I'll show you how to get rid of this window if you don't want to see it every time you open Revit. And if you do want to see it, there's also a timer on it that you can activate, and it would go away by itself after a few seconds. So after you launch your Revit, after you've installed PyRevit and launch Revit, you'll see that there's this new PyRevit tab inside the Revit environment. That's very similar to any other add-on that you have seen. This tab has been split into a couple of panels. The rest of the panels, except for the first one, are basically all the tools that you can use to get your job done. All the tools that are shipped with PyRevit to make your life a little bit easier. The first one, that's called the pyRevit panel, has a slide out that has a whole bunch of other buttons and icons in here. This is what I call the pyRevit panel. So in conversation with online conversations and stuff like that, if I mention pyRevit panel, that's what it really means. That's the one that sort of like controls the pyRevit itself and how it loads and what kind of extensions do you want to have and pyRevit settings and a couple of links to other good resources and stuff like that. So that's what really the first panel is. I'm going to open the slide out. The first one is the about. It gives you an about window that tells you what version of pyRevit you're running and a couple of really good links to the resources like YouTube and the Twitter account and the wiki and all that kind of stuff right here. There's an extension button that will show you all the extensions that are shipped with pyRevit that you can activate and deactivate. So if you need, for example, PyApex developed by Alexei Melnikov, you can install that extension. This is what he has developed for pyRevit and provided on his own repo on GitHub. But pyRevit extension can actually install that extension on your machine and load it in your user interface. That's sort of like the extension manager for pyRevit. And then a couple of really good links to other resources, like for example, API documentations for Revit, a list of all the emojis that you can use in the output window, a really good website for finding icons for your tools and stuff like that if you're developing the tools. But these are mostly sort of like geared towards the people who actually want to develop for Revit and reference the API documentation and all that kind of stuff. The last most important button on this slide out is the pyRevit settings. When you open this, it'll give you this big window that has a series of groups of other settings. One of the most important ones is the core settings that sort of like sets the core of pyRevit. And you get familiar with these settings as you use pyRevit more. For example, if you want to use CPython to develop for pyRevit, that's where the engine settings for pyRevit are. If you see any conflicts with Dynamo on your Revit and you want to use pyRevit at the same time with Dynamo, you might want to come here and change your IronPython engine to something that's backwards compatible with Dynamo. It's completely okay if you don't know about these stuff and come online and ask about this, and I'll point out these to you and show you where to find them. But basically, the goal is to give you an overview of where things are in Revit, in pyRevit, so you can, if you can take a look and see if you can find stuff. There is a group that's called reporting levels. That's kind of important. It's about that window that we talked about that launches at the start of Revit. If you don't want to see it, you can put it on no reporting. You basically just see Revit launching without any information coming from pyRevit. Usually I can get it on set it on verbose, and there's the timeout seconds that you can also set on it as well if you want it to go away after a couple of seconds. The rest of the stuff are more like about the pyRevit Roots API, much deeper and more complex features of pyRevit. There are two other ones that you might find useful. One is supported Revit version. It'll inspect your machine and basically list the actual Revit versions that you have installed on your machine, and it will let you disable and enable pyRevit from here for these Revit versions. Of course, you can't disable it for the current version that you're sitting on, but you can do that from any other Revit version that you're running. So if you only want to see it on 2020, you can launch 2020 and disable it for every other add-on that, every other Revit that's installed on your machine. There is a UI, user interface, user experience section that has a couple of things. There is a language selector. The language is still in development. Not all the tools have been translated, but this is sort of like where the pyRevit language will go. And there is a colorized open documents that places a colored bar at the top of the Revit tabs and a colored frame, a border basically around the tabs that belong to a Revit family document. And I'll show you that in a second. So a couple of other things that you might really find useful inside this settings window to get pyRevit set up for your environment. There's a custom extensions directories that we talk when we actually get into discussion about how to set up a tool for pyRevit. So we'll come back to this window in a few minutes again. You can see that I have two different models open in my Revit. You can see that there are 3 tabs, but 2 of them have the same top bar. So they kind of like group these 2 under the same document. This color notifies another document, and this yellow one that's in here, it's a different document. The lines are very thin because I didn't really want to be intrusive on the Revit UI and sort of like add a lot of colors and all that kind of stuff, especially if you're taking Revit to meetings and whatnot, and you want to show it to your clients and stuff like that. Maybe it's not a really good idea to have something that would be very different from what they see on their own screen when they use Revit. But there are a whole bunch of other add-ons that you can also find online that will let you basically color all these tabs in many different ways and have it customized and all that kind of stuff. So in this case, I have two documents open. If I go inside, let's say this, and open a family, let's see if I can open this family. You can see that the family document that's been opened has a border around it, around the tab. So in this one, I can open another view. You can see these two have a border. So fairly easy to find the family tabs. And then you can see also that this one actually belongs to that document. So if you want to realign them and move around, super easy. You can turn off and on this tab coloring from here. So you can turn it off, turn it on, and it would basically color the documents again with the same color that it has selected before. You just notice that basically this is a pyRevit tool that I clicked on. It looks and feels exactly like every other Revit utility that you use in your Revit. They might feel slower, partly because they're running on a Python engine, but for the sort of like speed that you lose, they'll give you a lot of flexibility. So I can make changes to this script on the fly when Revit is running, and without need to close my model, close Revit, recompile the application again, and launch Revit and open the model and test again. So development process is a lot easier. They're not meant to be professionally distributed tools for, as Revit add-ons. It's meant to be as a rapid application prototyping environment, but the tools are super powerful. So a lot of people actually use them in their production environments as well. So at this point, I'm gonna take you through some of these tools and show you how you can sort of like save a lot of time working with Revit. Now, I have the base Revit model open that's shipped with every Revit version. I usually use this because you can basically just, remember this and replicate it on your own drawings, on your own Revit installations as well. There's no need for a specific Revit document, Revit model. There's a tool that is called, let's talk about section box. If I go into a 3D view in my model and I activate the section box, see if the section box is hidden. It is. Okay, so I'm gonna maybe like put the section box right here. You would know that, as you've, all your Revit experience users know, that if I go here and turn off the section box from here and turn it back on, it actually resets the size of the section box. So instead of hiding it on a window manually, you can use this section box tool that will hide it for you and bring it back on every time you need it, and it would keep the exact same section box size and orientation and everything else that you have set up. So that's super, super handy. There's another one that does basically the same thing with the imported content. So if you have CAD imports and stuff like that, and you want to turn them off and on in the view, you can use these toggle buttons that are under the toggles panel to toggle these things. One of the other useful sort of like toggles in that area is that if I have, let's say, a couple of sections, let me create a view for, let's say, a reflected ceiling plan for that same level. And I have that view here. There's a lot of times that you're working in your model and you're working in a certain area, and you want to be able to go back and forth between different floor plans of the same area, or like RCPs of the same area, or maybe structural plans of the same area. And zooming back and forth between these areas, it's really hard. So one of the things that you can do is that you can activate the Sync Views tool on pyRevit, and whenever you switch views, they'll keep the view pan and zoom synchronized. So if I change this and sort of like work in this mode, when I go back to the other view, it'll keep that pan and zoom level synchronized, so they're all in the same place. So I can easily swap between these and make sure like things are on top of each other, or like overhead lines are aligned and all that kind of stuff in here as well. just to make your workflows a little bit, your life a little bit easier. There is another set of tools in pyRevit that's called the pick tools. You know that if I, for example, want to select all the grid lines in this view, I kind of have to do a box selection and then use the filter on the corner of the screen. So I have to select thousands of elements, basically, use the filter at the corner of the screen to be able to filter what I want. A more appropriate way to do this is to use the pick tool and say, hey, I want to select grids, and then do the box selection. And the box selection only picks the elements that you wanted to be selected. So if I open this, I don't see anything other than grids in here. This makes selection process a lot easier, especially when you sort of like are working on large models. Revit wants to draw all these pen gizmos and stuff like that on the objects, and it will take a lot of time to do a box selection on a series of elements. There's a series of stuff categories basically that show up on this list. And this list is basically what I ended up using the most, but it's fully configurable to whatever that you want to have it. Some of these pyRevit tools, as you've seen, as you might have noticed, they have a black dot in front of their name. These are the tools that are configurable. They have options. The way you get to the options on a tool is that you hold Shift on your keyboard and then click on the tool. And the tool, instead of actually executing the actual functionality, will give you the options. So in this case, it'll tell you to select the favorite categories that you want to see, and you see that there's a whole bunch of them are selected. Those are the ones that'll show up when I click on the tool. And then you can add whatever you want to this or remove, and basically configure it the way you want it to be. So any tool that you see that has a black dot in front of it, it means that it has an option. You can shift click and get to the options. Tools have pretty good tooltips as well. So if you hover over a tool, you'll see the tooltip will show up. And in this case, like you can notice that there's a shift. I can't move my mouse here, but you can say that the tooltip on the second line says shift click, and it has a description for it. So any of the tools that have alternate clicking options will actually give you the information about it. Hey, that if you do this, a separate action will happen that is different from the intended use. Most of this stuff around the the configuring of the main tool. And I'll show you another couple of examples of the tools that are configurable. To show you another example of the toggles, and basically the last toggle that we wanted to talk about is that there's this tool called Minify Revit UI. There's a lot of times that you might end up having a lot of like add-ons and stuff like that in your Revit, and it would make it really confusing to work within the Revit environment if you have too many tabs open. Especially for non-English languages like German. German Revit has very long names for the tabs. So like 2-3 add-ons, if you install in Revit, your window doesn't have enough space for the tabs anymore. So you can shift click on the Minify Revit tool. And in this case, I'm going to say, like, I don't want to see these tools. Say hide selected tabs. And when I activate this toggle, it'll hide the extra tabs in my Revit navbar, so I can very easily find the stuff that I'm working with. And I can turn it off and to bring it back. So that's another example of a tool that has configurations embedded inside. This selection tab, this selection panel that I showed you, the pick tool, has a series of other utilities that are kind of helpful with selection. One of the most important ones is what I call the selection memory. It basically acts like the memory buttons on your old calculator, the M+, MR, M-, like those memory buttons. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not. But basically, the way it works is that, let's say I want to select this large list of elements from multiple views. I'm just going to basically just randomly select a whole bunch of stuff just to show you how it works. I'm going to grab a couple of grids from here. I'm going to go to pyRevit, and I'm going to say memory right, M-right. So I'll add the selection to the memory. And I can deselect and cancel. And I can maybe go here, add a whole bunch of other ones, go to pyRevit and say memory append. So it would add these elements that I've selected into the memory. And then I can go maybe to a different view and say, hey, I want to add these as well. I'm going to go here and say memory append. And you can go between, maybe you want to select all the doors and all the tags that are associated with them. So you can select the doors, select all the similar ones, add it to the memory, and then select tags, all the similar ones, add it to the memory. The whole point is that you can deselect in between the sort of like memory appends that you do. And And then once you're ready, you can just say memory read, and it would read that memory and it would select all the elements that you wanted to be selected. This is a great utility when you want to make big changes in Revit. I've moved whole wings of a building with all its levels and grids and everything else in one move action. If you're using this tool, basically, just because you can select stuff very easily. And sort of like go between the levels, make sure everything is selected, and do one move and move everything at the same time. So these are very powerful selection tools. There's an isolate tool that you can quickly isolate area lines, columns, doors, and all that kind of stuff from your view. So I can click on this view, I can say isolate doors, and it would basically switch my temporary view, my view to the temporary hide isolate, and it would isolate those elements that I wanted. And it's sort of like smart about the tags that are associated with it. So if you ask it to isolate the rooms, it'll actually keep the room room tags. So like this, it'll actually keep the rooms for you as well. So the tags will actually show up. As you might have known that if you can't really isolate tags in a view because the rooms, these host objects will go away and the tags won't be visible. So that's sort of like a very good workaround that reduces a couple of steps in isolating elements. There's a whole bunch of other tools under select for selecting different things. A lot of these tools feel activated, deactivated, and it's because they require you to have a selection first. Like I can have a selection in this view, and then I can go here to the select, and the invert selection tool is active, and then I can invert my selection and select everything else that I had not selected before. So that's also a really good utility in selecting and working with the Revit models. Revit elements. This memory sort of like selection that we talked about has a control set of tools in here. So like, for example, I can save the memory that I had selected as a selection filter. So when I go to view filters, now I have a selection filter that has those elements that I had selected in my memory saved inside of it. So this is really good if you want to have a whole bunch of elements selected, create a filter, and go apply that filter into a view and apply visibility graphics to them, or use that filter anywhere else. And you can rename it to whatever you want it to be. So that's a good way of like sort of like saving that selection inside your model so you can reuse it later. There's another set of really good tools for copying visibility graphics between multiple different views, or like view settings, basically. I created a seating plan. I'm just going to duplicate it and call it a copy. And in this one, I'm going to go and say, hey, all my walls on the cut pattern, I want it to be of this color, and let's say I want it to be solid. So all my walls are going to show up like this. But then let's say this is like a working view and you go to another view, you kind of want to have the same settings. A very quick way is to come back to your original view, say copy state, and say copy the visibility graphics, and then go to the other one and say paste state, paste visibility graphics. You don't really have to say it that, hey, I want to paste visibility graphics, because it knows what it has copied before. So that's a very quick way of sort of like getting some of these settings from one view to another. Another example of it would be, oh, this is another project. Another example of it would be something like a, let's say, selection box. So if I have a selection box for this view right now here, and I open another view, let's say, I don't know if we have, see if I can duplicate this and reset its section box. I can come here and say copy state, give me the 3D section box, and go here, paste the section box in here, and it would apply the same section box in this view as well. So you can sort of like match the different 3D views and whatnot. There's a couple of tools under analysis. Like one of them finds the ranges of all the roof slopes in your model. Well, some of them actually are erring. There's another one that I use a lot of times that it gives you a count of all the parking family instances that you have in the current view. So I run that on my site plan, and it would count all the parkings of different types in my view. You can also set up like schedules for this kind of stuff. Some of these stuff I've created just because I needed it for a project to do it really quickly. And then there's a couple of inspect tools in here that help you inspect elements and figure out, for example, other things that are associated with them. For example, if I come here and say, click this door and say inspect, find referenced elements, it actually tries to delete that element, and from the API, it grabs a series of items that would be removed if you delete that element. So basically it gives you a list of everything that's sort of like attached to this element. And you can see that there's a family instance, which is the door itself, and it says the selected object. That was the selected door that we had. And there's also an independent tag, which is the door tag that was associated with it. So if I click on it, it actually takes me to that tag, and it will show me that, hey, this tag was the one that would get deleted if you delete that door. This is really helpful, especially if you have an element that might be tagged in a different view. So if you delete the element, you'll know that a whole bunch of other tags and dimensions and stuff like that would be deleted. This is a good way of finding those before you actually remove an object. So there are a whole bunch of like good tools listed under here as well. There is a, I'm going to go open a new drafting view. Let's say, excuse me, this Zoom control window is giving me a hard time. Let me open a new drafting view here. And one of the most famous tools in pyRevit is the make pattern tool, that you can create patterns from a whole bunch of drawing lines that you have in Revit. So I'm going to actually open an example file that's here, just to show you what the series of the range of things that you can do. So for example, I've drawn a box like this, and I have drawn a spline like this inside the box. And any of you that have tried to create patterns for Revit and AutoCAD before, you know that using curves and all that kind of stuff is really, really hard. You have to pay for expensive add-ons to be able to basically do that. But you can see that tile has been turned into a pattern that basically is copied over just like this as part of the pattern. So you can see that that's the sort of like the pattern that forms when this pattern is created. So it's a tile pattern. Basically tiles whatever that you have drawn inside that box in a pattern. And you can use this as part of, inside your field regions, on your walls. You can create model or detail patterns and a lot of like a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm going to grab these lines from here. And these lines are only a guide. You don't really have to draw a box, but it makes your life a little bit easier if you do. So I'm going to go here and say, let's say I want to draft a whole bunch of lines. Say I want to draw a couple of boxes. Oops, no dimensions. Maybe something like this in here. And a couple of other lines. And I'm going to change the line styles to something that's solid. The actual line style really doesn't matter because the pattern system doesn't care about the line styles. But I'm going to select these lines, the lines that are basically part of my pattern. You don't have to select the border. That's not part of your pattern. That's just sort of like a selection utility. And I can say make pattern and give it a name. This is going to be a model pattern. I do want a field region created for it automatically. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. You can scale it, you can rotate it, that kind of stuff. You can flip the pattern that you have drawn in different ways. So you can basically draw something, maybe a stone pattern, and then you can generate multiple different patterns out of it with different orientations and scales and all that kind of stuff very easily. So I'm going to say create pattern, then it asks me for the bottom right corner, bottom left corner, and the top right corner, and then it would create the pattern for me. And then I can go create a field region here. And I can change the type of that to the new pattern that's been created for us. So you can see that that pattern very easily is sort of like created inside this. And because it was a model pattern, now I can go maybe inside one of these levels, and let's draw a wall. And let's isolate to that wall. And then that example, I can go here. let's say the finished board, the gypsum wall board, that's part of my, you can see the background or the foreground would be the model and the new pattern that we created. Actually search for new, that. So very easily you can create patterns in Revit, and you can use them for a lot of different things. I have created them for like creating construction joints for exterior panels and all that kind of stuff. Anything that basically you can imagine, you can create a pattern for very easily. As long as it's sort of like tiled and you can figure out the tiling, you can create patterns for it. There's a couple of utilities called the match utilities. You can match properties of dimensions and sort of like other elements in here. You can see there's a video on some of these tools that'll show you that you can match the configurations that you have done on one dimension to another dimension. One of the ones that is fairly popular is Match Paint tool. So if you have a paint assigned to a surface, you can actually pick up that paint and apply it to other surfaces very quickly without really needing to figure out what paint is associated with it. There's another one that's called the Match Properties, and it's a fairly sort of like important utility. I'm going to click on it and say Match Properties. I want to do Match Properties on elements. And I'm going to click that element that's the source of my properties. And I want to sort of like search for materials. This element, this family has 3 type parameters that are materials. So cabinet material, face material, and hardware material. I want to basically select all 3 of them and say I want to apply that to this one. And you can see they match the properties between 2 completely different families. These 2 families are completely different, and they're different types, obviously, but it will find the exact same parameters, type parameters or instance parameters on the other element, and it would apply that sort of like settings to it. So if I do the same, So if I do the same with this one again, and apply it here, you can see actually both of them changed because they were type materials, and it got applied to any type that was basically assigned to that element. So that's a very, very helpful utility. There is another one that I wanted to show you. Let's go and create a new empty model, just because I don't want to have a lot of clutter around me. So this model, I'm going to expand this area and go through sheets. So you see there's no sheets in this model right now. I'm going to go skip through these, so it's sort of like the rest of these tools, and go to the last one that's called the drawing set. The second to last one that's called the drawing set. There's a lot of tools inside of this that are made to work with sheets and views and revisions and all that kind of stuff that I find them really important. Under sheets, one of the really good tools is called the batch sheet maker. So one of the things that you can do using this tool is that you can say, hey, I want a series of sheets from 100 to 110, let's say, and they're all going to be named something. And I want to create the sheets or placeholders out of them. In this case, I'm just going to go create sheets. And you can see that this text could represent a series of sheet ranges that, for example, you get from your structural engineer, you get your mechanical engineer, and you can copy that in here and hit the create. It'll ask you which title block you want to use. In this model, I don't have any. And it would generate all these sheets for me right there in the model. So that's a very good way of getting a series of sheets created very quickly in your model that you can work on. Now, I'm going to add a couple of revisions to this model as well. And I'm going to say, go under revisions and say, set revision on sheets. So now that I have a couple of different sheets, I can say I want to set the revision 2 and 4 on these sheets. And it will set the sheets with those revisions on those sheets for you. I can actually go and select one of these sheets. I don't exactly actually remember which one I selected, but we can go take a look at the revisions, and you can see that revision 2 and 4 is actually set on that sheet. Another one of the great tools is that you can create revised sheet sets based on the revisions that you have in your model. So now we have a couple of sheets that have been sort of like assigned the revision number 4. So I can select that, and I can create a sheet set for that revision. and it will tell me these sheets are basically placed inside that create sheet set. And if the sheet is empty, it actually tell you that, hey, these sheets don't have any content on them. Just make sure you double check them and stuff like that. So when I go to print, the standard print view in Revit, now under the selected view sheets, there's a new group that's called the revision for, and it has those sheets selected in it. So from now on, I can just hit that and would get the revision 4 prints only. And it can keep it exactly updated with just recreating that revised sheet for that revision every time you want to basically, before you print. You can control the rest of the revisions with this, like turn them on, turn them off, find revised sheets, a whole bunch of stuff. You can select a cloud, find the rest of the revised sheets that have the same cloud. There are a whole bunch of like really good utilities related to revisions. There's another one that's for copying revisions to open documents. So if you work on multiple different projects that kind of go through the same kind of revisions, you can actually very easily copy the revision content from one project to another project. So those are really, really good utilities, and there's a whole bunch of them here related to working with sheets. I'll get to the keynotes. Sort of like this is more of a complex tool that I want to talk about it at the end. But the print sheets is the last one that I really want to talk about. This one is the sort of like a big, larger tool in pyRevit that lets you print your sheets in whatever order and manner that you have really designed for your model. So the way most companies do, and the way that's very popular to do this, is that you go set up a sheet list schedule. I'm going to list the sheet number and sheet name in here. And you set up a project parameter or a whatever shared parameter, whatever, that you sort of like standardize in your company to get these sheets sorted in order. So as long as you have a sheet list like this that has an order that you're happy with, you can come to pyRevit and say print sheets, select that sheet list. There's just only one of them in here, so it's automatically selected. It'll give you all the sheets. It'll give you the information about the latest revisions on them. It'll give you the final PDF name of that document. There is naming format conventions in here that you can go and say, hey, I want this maybe with the underscores in between the different fields. Or you can actually edit the format and create your own. This is especially helpful if you want to sort of like customize the formats for a specific municipality, if you want to submit them to the online platform and stuff like that, and you want it, there has to be a very specific naming format. You can actually use a whole bunch of properties and stuff like that to get the naming format right. You get to select the printer that you want to work with, the printer settings that you want to work with, the configurations for the range of numbers that you want to put in front of the PDF, so they are listed in order. So you can, if you want to merge them later with the rest of the documents that you get from everybody else, everything is in order. So basically, this what it does is that it prints the sheets inside your sheet list in order from Revit. The two other important things that it does is that it actually combines all the sheets in order into PDF. So that's also very important. That it gives you one PDF, but all the sheets are in order that you want it to be. And it also allows for variable paper size per sheet. In this one, I think I do have a bad printer on this that doesn't allow me to do this. But there's a whole bunch of guides and stuff like that about how this works. And basically what it does is that it lets you sort of like go through all your sheets and then set a print. I think I broke this one. I apologize, I have the wrong printer in here. Sorry, bad printer example. But basically it lets you select different print configurations for those sheets. Like for example, you have the cover sheet and a couple of rendering sheets that need to be printed in color and a whole bunch of other sheets that needs to be printed in grayscale. So you can basically say, hey, the grayscale is the default. These series of sheets will be printed with color. It actually remembers those if you have a very specific property set on the sheets. You can store that information there and it would recover it from there the next time. This is an example of that window that I talked about that sort of like opens when the pyRevit opens. Hey, Daniel, how am I doing on time?
We're probably about 45 minutes in.
Okay. Okay. So let me actually open an empty model again. Okay. And you can see like pyRevit really doesn't add that much time to your load process in Revit. These are the most important tools that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to quickly mention the Manage Keynote tool. Manage Keynote tool is also a very good utility that you can use to sort of like work with keynotes inside your Revit model. In this case, I'm going to select a different keynote file. I don't know if I have anything saved here. I don't think so. Let me create an empty keynote file. So once a project is set up with the Keynote file, it'll give you this Keynote Manager. You see all the categories. You can add a category in here. I'm going to add maybe, I don't know, FF&E, anything that's related to that. That would be my category 1. I'm going to add a category in here. Then I'm going to go add a whole bunch of keynotes under this. Let's say that would be the K1. And that would be my, I don't know, furniture. And there's a bunch of tools that if you want to change the casing of that thing and sort of like add the keynote in here, and you can apply that keynote in your model very easily as well. You can double click and apply that in your, I don't know if I have any keynotes loaded in. Let's actually use another example. Okay, I'm going to use this as an example because I have a couple of keynote families loaded. So I'm going to go here, keynote file. It doesn't have anything associated with it. I'm going to use that keynote file. It already has everything with it. I'm going to double click on this, add the keynote right there, and it would apply the right value to it. You can open that window again. You can see that this keynote has been used one time. You can click on this search tool. It'll actually find all the instances of those keynotes for you. You can click on them. It'll take you to that keynote. And if it's actually multi-user, so if anybody else is working with the Keynote file, editing that Keynote, you'll see their name here. And you can actually place a couple of different Keynote types in here as well, user Keynote, element types, element Keynote, material Keynotes, and you can edit the Keynotes, add the new one, add sub-Keynotes, fairly sort of like full-featured Keynote Manager. The only thing that it doesn't do at the moment is working with BIM 360 that I'm working on to try to figure out how I can sort of like incorporated in those. As long as you have the Keynote file shared somewhere, that's sort of like shared, synchronized very quickly between the Revit users, you should be able to use the Keynote Manager across sort of like on the cloud platforms as well. So obviously I didn't get sort of like enough time to go through all the tools that's inside pyRevit. Just trying to give a glimpse of like what you get, the sort of like combination of tools that help you model better, fix drawing modifications, all that kind of stuff, manage your print sets and stuff like this. The last project panel has a lot of tools that are related to the project management, wiping information from the project, cleaning up Revit models and all that kind of stuff. At this point, I want to take you, sort of like show you to resources that you might find useful if you want to develop scripts for pyRevit. I'm going to put this on pause. I'm going to go back to the wiki that we talked a little about. I'm going back to the home page. Okay, so if you go under the developer docs, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of resources that'll show you how you can create your first command for pyRevit. And pyRevit can run programs from different languages. So it can work with Python, CPython, C#, sort of like VB.NET, and a couple of other things. One of the most beautiful things about them is that you don't have to compile C# applications. You can write C# as a script, and every time you click on it, it'll rerun that newer version for you. So the most important thing is that you don't really have to close your Revit. You can just open your text editor, your C# editor on the side, and make changes to the script, rerun it again, and you will get the new results in there. These documents will take you through some of those resources. There is this very good video that's called the Python RPS, RPW, and pyRevit. I encourage you to watch this. It's about 23 minutes. It's not very long, but it'll give you a very good overview of how you can use Python, the RPS, which is a Revit Python shell, RPW, which is a Revit Python wrapper, which is basically a library of really good, useful Python utilities that you can use, and the pyRevit itself sort of like it familiarizes you with this whole ecosystem of what is available in Revit, in developing Python programs for Revit. And there's a whole bunch of other videos, about like 6-7 videos that will take you through all the main operations that you can do using the API on the Revit elements, like creating Revit elements, deleting them, modifying them, analyzing information from them, and sort of like anything that's related to these kind of operations. The pyRevit is structured in, pyRevit tools are structured in bundles, basically. So if I want to create a new button, a new tab, a new button using pyRevit for my Revit, it's actually very easy. I'm going to add a new folder in here, my desktop, call it extensions. Go inside of it. The name of this folder doesn't matter. I just want to put my extensions in here. And I'm going to call this my, let's say, PDUG.extension. The only part of this name that matters is the dot extension at the end. This is how pyRevit knows this is an extension file. And I'm going to go inside it. Actually, let's copy that name, go inside of it, create another directory, call it PDUG.panel, go inside it, new folder, PDUG, well, let's say hello world, push button. These are called pyRevit bundles. So they have a name and they have an extension, and the extension is really important. That's how pyRevit knows what you want to create. So this way it knows that you want to create a pyRevit extension. You want to create, I actually forgot the tab in front of it. You want to create a the tab. I'm going to place the panel inside the tab. So you have the extension, you have a tab inside the extension, you have a panel inside that tab, and you have a push button inside that panel. So sort of like a directory structure of what you want to create. And inside the push button, I'm going to create a script, a Python script, or a C# script, or a Dynamo script, or whatever else that you want to create. And I want to pick an icon for my tool as well. So I'm going to use this website that I usually go to. It's actually a pretty good resource. Let me open it from this browser because I think the new version requires you to sign in. And let's search for, let's see, I don't know, user or something like that. Let's say we want to use this icon for the tool. You can recolor it, change the color and stuff like that in here. Download the actual button. Usually go with 96 pixels because a lot of us are actually using Revit with high resolution monitors. It would be, you would get a much nicer icon that way. I'm going to copy that here. Get rid of that file as well. Okay, so going to go grab that icon from my downloads folder, place it here, and I'm going to change the name to icon because every tool has an icon. So there's an icon, there's a script. You can't really get simpler than this. And inside of my script, I'm going to create a Python script and say, hey, print hello world. Now I'm going to go back to Revit, and notice I'm not closing Revit or anything like that. Go to pyRevit settings. Tell pyRevit where my extensions are. Add a folder. Tell the pyRevit that on desktop directory extensions, I have other extensions listed inside of this. And save settings and reload. This way, the pyRevit installation will be separate from your extensions. Your extensions are safe. The pyRevit installation, you can uninstall, opt the new ones and all that kind of stuff. No issues. Your extensions are going to sort of like remain in the same spot. And pyRevit would reload while the Revit is running, and you can see that it found the PDUG extension and it created a UI and everything else for it. And you will notice that there's a PDUG tab here. There's a panel, and there's a Hello World button. And if you click on it, you get the Hello World outside of sort of like in the output window. So from now on, the only things that you really need to do is to create more of these nested bundles So like if you want to add more tabs, you can add more tabs, more panels, more contents, more push buttons. And there's actually a lot of the different types of bundles that you can use. Push button is just one of them. Maybe you want a stack button that sort of like lists a whole bunch of other buttons under it. And I'll show you where you can find resources about these. So you just add more of these and create scripts that use the Revit API to communicate with Revit and sort of like analyze data, create data, whatever that you need to do. To sort of like familiarize yourself with the process, the existing pyRevit tools are actually super, super helpful. There's a lot of examples of like how I've done things or other people that have created tools for pyRevit have done things. Any of these tools that are inside pyRevit and loaded using pyRevit, you can hold Alt and click on the tool. And instead of running it, it'll take you to the bundle that I just showed you for that utility. So you can see that under extensions, the chip with pyRevit, pyRevit tools, tab, panel, push button, and inside of this, there's a script, there's a Python module, there are a couple of XAML configuration files for the output windows, there's an icon, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So you can very easily go directly to the source of that tool, look inside of it and see how things work, make changes to them if you need to, and sort of like copy and paste and create your own tools and stuff like that. Accessing these things is very easy in pyRevit. The reference documents, the developer docs on the reference has a section that's called pyRevit bundles. This is the one that talks about all these different bundle types. So if I go inside it, you'll see that it lists everything. There are IronPython scripts, C# scripts on the push buttons. There are content bundles. There are URL buttons. A whole bunch of different bundle types. While I'm talking, I'm going to let another one of these extensions load so I can show you something. But basically, you can go through this documentation and see all the different types of bundles that you can create in pyRevit and what are the necessary configurations are and what sort of like stuff they allow you to do and whatnot. Like for example, we talked about the script and the icon, but you can actually include a tooltip.png file that will show up as a tooltip, or it could be a video that'll show up as a tooltip, or it could be a help file that will show up as the help for that document, for that utility. It's very, very extensible. And there are more content about like how you can set the context of the tool. Like for example, you want your tool to run only when there is a specific type of selection active, and sort of like, or where you want to place it in the layout and stuff like that. So this section bundles talks about all these main tool bundles, and there's a section extension talks about the extension bundles. So there's sort of like a more umbrella kind of type of bundle that includes a whole bunch of other bundles inside of it. And the extension is generally the method that you ship your utilities to other users. So you can zip that extension or place it on GitHub, however you want to get it to other people. They can sort of like copy it on their machine, add it to the path of the pyRevit, load your tools, and start using them very easily. There's another section that talks about all the different languages and whatever that you can do inside your extensions. There are a lot of utilities available for extensions. For example, under effective output, you'll see there's a lot of options that you can use to output better information to the users. You can use emojis on the output window, for example. You can create tables in the output window. You can sort of like, let's say, you can use the progress bar on the output window to show the progress of your utility. The progress bar on top of the Revit window to show that progress, or the prompts and stuff like that. The error messages and all that kind of stuff that you want to get to the users. Or you might want to use sort of like visualize data in a better way. There's a visualize data section that'll take you through how you can use the actual charts inside the output window to sort of like visualize the information in charts. So I'm going to actually run one of these bundle tests. Let's see, unit test charts. To show an example. So like, for example, this is an output window that has interactive charts printed in the output window from the data that you can collect. And it's fairly interactive and stuff like that. So this output window is actually very, very helpful in printing the different types of information that you want to extract from the Revit models. One of the other things that I wanted to show you was the, let's talk about the content bundle. So one of the other types of pyRevit bundles is called a content bundle. Instead of running a script, you can actually load a family inside the Revit. So you can place that family inside your bundle. So if I go inside that bundle, see, instead of any script, there's no scripts in here, but there are a couple of different families, and they could be specific to Revit versions. So you can have multiple different Revit families for different Revit versions, so they don't get converted and stuff like that. And you turn that into a tool that every time you click on it, you can place that specific family. This is really good if you want to, you want to sort of like standardize a specific type of family that needs to be placed in your model. You can, like, for example, shift click on it and use a different type of family. So the point that I'm trying to make is that there are a lot of different bundles available in pyRevit that you can use. Some of these bundles are just hyperlinks. So like this one doesn't do anything except opening a web page. That's a good way of maybe placing links to your company standards and documents and stuff like that inside the Revit user interface, so people have a very easy way of getting into. Or if you develop like cloud applications, web apps for your company, very easy to get to those from the Revit environment. So that's sort of like an overview of how pyRevit really works. And you can actually develop scripts for pyRevit. I'm going to close with by mentioning a couple of other things that are sort of like on the more advanced side of pyRevit. For people that want to deploy pyRevit, pyRevit has a CLI tool, a command line tool. I'm going to show that to you here. Let's see if I can change the size of this. That's not a good option. No, not that one. So in my command prompt, I can say pyRevit, for example, env, and it would give me information about the pyRevit installation, the versions of Revit that are installed on this machine, and a lot of other information. You can configure, install, deploy pyRevit using this tool. It's very powerful. So if you want to basically customize the pyRevit deployment with your own custom tools, maybe you don't want any of the standard tools, or you want to reduce the number of these standard tools and sort of like pick and choose from them, you can customize that and install it with the pyRevit CLI tool on your user's machine. All the information related to this is available under the developer docs, pyRevit CLI. Right here, it'll give you to all the different sections of how this utility can be used. There's another sort of like aspect of pyRevit that's called the telemetry system. pyRevit has a telemetry system that you can use to collect information about what is happening inside your Revit models. So under pyRevit settings, I'm just going to take you to the configurations for the telemetry and show you what kind of information can be collected. So basically, anything that happens inside a Revit model that's provided by the Revit API, like for example, the document opening, document closing, a view being opened, being closed, document being printed, sort of like work sharing enabled, something fails in your document, a family is loaded, family is sort of like into the document and stuff like that, or like file export and whatnot. These are all events. You can actually set up pyRevit in a way that for all your users, it will send these information to your the telemetry server that is also shipped with pyRevit. You just have to pick a server and run it there and connect it to a database that you want. And it'll send you and collect all this information from the users and will send it to you. So you have one place that you can look into and say, hey, how many different errors happened today using pyRevit, or like what models are mostly active these days, what Revit versions are mostly active these days, and all that kind of stuff. All the sort of like metrics that you want to use in your across your company. Also, of course, it has these telemetry systems for its own tools as well. So if you develop tools for the users and you want to be able to collect the error messages from these tools in one place without really waiting for the users to give you this feedback, that's also a really good way of doing that. If you have a telemetry server, every time a utility fails or passes, you get a notification on your server side that, hey, this happened and this is the error message. So that's sort of like the telemetry system, everything about setting up the telemetry system, getting your databases set up, sort of like the tables and all that kind of stuff, and configuring pyRevit is described right here in this document. So this core section, as you might have noticed, is a lot of like more advanced stuff about pyRevit, advanced configurations of advanced deployments, telemetry system, the pyRevit runtime, the Roots API that you can allows you to control Revit from outside, from the cloud. That kind of stuff is sort of like described here. I'm going to close with this and open for any questions that you might have. I'm really hoping that, of course, you can't really go through all these tools within like an hour or so, but my end goal was to show you an overview of really what pyRevit is. If you end up just using the tools, I hope this will actually help you save time and sort of like get rid of all this like, bad workflows and stuff like that we have just because of the Revit limitations. And if you end up developing pyRevit, if you know Python, C#, any other language, and if you end up developing for it, I hope you can create really powerful tools that'll help you customize the workflows that you have exactly for your company and the way you want to do, you want to work, basically.
Okay, I guess thanks, Ehsan. While we're getting the questions, if you have any questions, please post them to the chat. We have a couple already coming in, but please go ahead and get those in there. While we're waiting for the questions to come in, I just wanted to say, while we still have pretty much everyone here, thanks again to Ehsan for presenting tonight. This has been really awesome. I've been enjoying this tool for a while, and I'm even more excited about seeing how I can get my team to use a bunch of these tools now. Thanks to Microsoft for sponsoring our AIA credits for this. Again, if you haven't already, please send us your AIA number so that we can get those credits into you. If you're going to self-report this, just a reminder that you need to do that within 10 days. One other thing I'd like to thank, I forgot to mention at the beginning, Revit Gods has been our presenter, our co-presenter for this meeting. They've helped us do some marketing and content development and everything for PDUG, and they've been a great partner for us. So thanks again to Revit Gods. And I guess with that, let me read through some of these questions. So, last thing is, yes, we will be posting the video of this to the PDUG YouTube channel. So you can go find that on there. And also, if you haven't gone to it already, the pyRevit YouTube channel has just a ton of really awesome videos that explain all this stuff in more detail. So if you're getting ready to start developing stuff, I highly recommend going through those video series.
Daniel, there's one question there that I just noticed. They're asking about customization of the isolate tab. This utility here, I'm assuming. It doesn't have the customization that the pick tool has right now, but that's fairly easy to add. I'm going to go to the pyRevit repo, create a bug report, and actually this one is not a bug. I'm going to create a feature request. I'm going to say customize isolate tool. And I'm going to create that here as an enhancement to the tool and submit it here. So you can follow this issue. Oh, wow, that's pretty impressive. The 1,000th issue on this happened on this meeting. Funny. So I'll take care of this. Whenever I take care of this, this issue will be closed, and you can download the updated pyRevit with that change.
Okay, so Uchenna is asking, pyRevit seems to do just about everything. Is the intention for this to remain a free tool within Revit? Also, would you recommend pyRevit to use for all custom add-on creation over other tools? Any other pros and cons?
So yes, pyRevit will always be free. I have no intention of charging for it. It's sort of like pyRevit, if you go here on their sponsor, pyRevit has a Patreon account that if you do want to contribute to the project, you can. However you want to do, or however way you want to do is completely up to you. If you go to the pyRevit homepage and sort of like go under the section that says get involved, you can put links in sort of like to guide you through however you want to share your passion or code your coins with the project. There's a lot of different things that could be improved in pyRevit. There's a whole bunch of bugs. There's a whole bunch of like stuff that could be made better and more general so everybody can use it. Feel free to get involved. As far as using pyRevit for other applications, pyRevit is really designed for Revit. The same concept could be applied to be able to work with other sort of like applications as well. But I've never really, I've started to using Rhino a lot more. So hopefully I'll create one of sort of like a pyRhino kind of thing, maybe for Rhino as well.
Let me see. Chris is asking, what's the best way to get to the Wiki page, the Notion page?
Oh, so this, I guess the best way, if you search for pyRevit in your search tool, it'll give you the GitHub repo, and from the GitHub repo, you can just click on this wiki, and it will take you to the wiki, and then you can place it wherever you want to inside your in your bookmarks. If you want to get it to from the sort of like the search bar, it's wiki.pyrevitlabs.io, and it will take you to that wiki. So you can just save that as the hyperlink. And if you're using pyRevit, you can open here and click on wiki, and it'll take you to the wiki itself. That's sort of like the quickest way I can get to the wiki.
Lynn is asking, is there a reset button when using the MWrite tool?
Oh yeah, so under memory, you can say memory clear, and it clears the memory.
A bunch of people saying thank you very much, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Any other questions? Please post them. We should be wrapping up in just a minute here. Brian is saying, I love the place origin marker. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. There are a couple of really good tools in here too, like orient section box to face that I didn't get to talk about, orient view to face. You want to explore these. A lot of these tools actually have tooltips and good like pictures and stuff like that. So they're fairly easy to figure out how to work. The tooltips are fairly extensive. A lot of them, like if you look at the make pattern, there's a whole bunch of text in there that actually explains these things, like how the tool is supposed to be used. When would be the next version of pyRevit is coming out? So I'm working on pyRevit 4.8 right now. The under releases 4.8 is beta 3. I'm going through the last round of the bug fixes, so that should be out like within a week or two at the most. After actually taking care of a lot of the big bugs, only a couple of them are remaining that I have to fix, and then it'll be out.
Esra is asking, do you see this replacing Dynamo Player for documentation aspects of a project?
You could use pyRevit to sort of like run your Dynamo definitions. So I don't, let's see, yeah. So I have a Dynamo example in here that I'm going to show you. So instead of, so this Dynamo BIM bundle, instead of a Python script, it has a Dynamo file that's called a script. So when you click on this tool, it'll use the Dynamo that's installed on your machine to run the definition for you. But it sort of like still requires the Dynamo itself to have all the extensions and sort of like add-ons and all the dependencies, what I call it, all the dependencies installed and deployed with it. So you still have to go through the process of like getting the Dynamo with the rest of the stuff in it. pyRevit could be used to very easily deploy these to other users as part of your extensions. The main reason that I added in there is that for a lot of companies that want to adopt pyRevit, they already have a lot of pyRevit Dynamo scripts. You can just bundle your Dynamo scripts inside the pyRevit buttons right now and get the users to use it. And in the future, if you would change the sort of like the script on the back and change the Dynamo to Python or C# or anything like that, the users won't see any difference in the workflow. It's still the same tool. It just runs on a different language and runs differently.
All right, I think that's all the questions that we have. Thanks again to Ehsan. Thanks for everyone for being here. I think this is a great presentation. Again, we'll be posting the video of this to the PDUG YouTube channel. And if you have any other questions, please send them in either to PDUG, or you can find Ehsan on Twitter. And last thing, again, just if you haven't sent us your AIA number, just please email that to us. So yeah. Thanks again, everybody.
Sorry, and I just wanted to add this, that to contact me, if you have any questions about the pyRevit project, you can ask me on Twitter. You can submit an issue on this pyRevit issue tracker. If it's really easy to set up a GitHub account for yourself. Submit an issue. You can track these changes that you request or the bugs that you report this way very easily. And you can always reach out to me on Twitter, or my website is ein.sh if you want to find me, and it has links to the pyRevit project, my YouTube or my Twitter, GitHub, LinkedIn, and everything else if you want to find me.
All right. Thanks again, Ehsan, and thanks everyone else for being here. And we hope to see you next month for our Rhino Inside Revit presentation. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Oh, I can't respond.